Please join me in welcoming Martin back to the stage.
Thanks a lot for the kind introduction. So over the last 20 minutes, you had a lot of hands-on excitement. I'm going to change pace a bit, kind of move a bit away from hands-on up to take you on a journey, covering the last few years of augmented reality or mobile augmented reality being a real roller coaster, as Wikitude has been there quite from the beginning. I think there are not many companies who can tell this story better than we can. Just as Pokémon is here on the main stage, who of you have played Pokémon, if I may ask? Who of you kind of passed level 5? Level 10? So still a few. Who is still playing Pokémon? Okay, so yeah, so actually what we're seeing is the classical hype cycle. And I think augmented reality as a whole has been on a hype cycle curve. And Pokémon, I think, is the best example to describe a hype. And I'll come to that in a second, what I mean with hype and use cases and values and all the buzzwords around the hype cycle. So I took the liberty of asking Google Trends about augmented reality since 2008, actually, figuring out the spikes and the interest of AR. So the first one back in 2008-09, this was Wikitude. So Wikitude, we started as a B2C company. We have been actually part of the real first big augmented reality hype. Back in the days, Wikitude was even on the cover of The Economist magazine, together with brands like Facebook, Google, and LG. And the title was, the cover page was The Platforms of the Future. I'm not sure why LG was on there, but at least it was honorable for us to be here as Wikitude. Who has an idea what this big spike was in 2011? Anyone? So I'm sure if I heard the right term, but actually it was Google Glass. So the next big kind of hype topic, the next big spike in terms of accrued interest over time was Google Glass. And last but not least, this was the kind of spike in 2016. Pokémon Go, they kind of did a fantastic job on one hand to kind of educate the masses what AR is or supposed to be, and on the other hand just create some interest, or even create false expectations. But let's come to that in a second. So as mentioned, Wikitude came a long way. What you've seen there in the previous slide, this little icon in 2008, what you see there, that's actually Wikitude in 2008. The first Wikitude AR travel guide is a B2C proposition, causing quite some uproar in the industry, major press, and what is the same, or what kind of makes Wikitude 2008 comparable to Pokémon 2016? Two things. One, it was a hype. B, it was the same technology. So it's interesting to see that it took us 7 years until the same technology is being used on such a kind of mass market phenomenon. Now, so we have come a long way from being the first AR app in the world 2008 up to now a white label augmented reality service provider with 20,000 apps out there powered by Wikitude, and in total, and I mentioned that this morning, more than 250 million installs of our technology on certain devices around the globe. But making one step back, and I talked a lot about the hype cycle. This is a chart that comes out by Gartner once a year, describes the adoption cycle of new technologies. And when you see that here, it's somewhere down the bottom is augmented reality. When Wikitude started in 2008, we have been quite at the peak. So this was in the middle of the hype cycle. Everybody was talking about AR. This was when Wikitude launched its first AR browser. The last 5-6 years have been interesting, a big roller coaster, but mostly down and up. What Gartner says, it takes a while until this kind of typical cycle has been gone through and until it reaches mass market adoption. What Wikitude was in 2008 was a classical technology trigger. So there was a technology like placing, this was in the Wikitude case, the Google G1 phone, where we could have access to the camera, we could have access to the sensors. Based on that, this was the technology we needed to place fancy little markers in front of castles and landmarks and create the world's first AR travel guide. Technology-wise, this is what we call geo-augmented reality. Nothing to do with fancy computer vision, nothing to do with fancy 3D recognition, solely placing content in the camera based on coordinates in the real life. So we still have this feature like in our SDK there. There are still like quite a few customers using that, mostly for travel and tourism. It's still okay. It's not super fancy, but it's still like a quite good use case for, or technology for certain use cases. And Pokémon Go is the best example. It's a legacy technology, but if embedded in a very good use case, if embedded in a well-balanced game, if embedded in a nice environment, it still can be hugely successful. Interestingly, what you see down there, Ice Age 4, this was 2013, a game launched by 20th Century Fox, where you were supposed to kind of catch nuts, only launched in the Netherlands, in Belgium, and in Luxembourg, using Wikitude technology, so same gameplay as Pokemon, only in those 3 countries, and I think we had like 200,000 active users. So already, the success therefore didn't come from the technology, but it came from like a well-balanced and well-promoted use case. When you go further down the hype cycle, so we talk about inflated expectations and disillusionment. And this is what has happened to us as well. So of course, people have expecting the world, but what they get were like a few markers floating around in front of like castles. Also, like there were, of course, other players in the market. They already have been focusing a lot on computer vision, and still, so based on like the media they have read, based on TV spots people have seen, they were expecting what you see today, like in a kind of HoloLens-like environment. They have seen Terminator movie. They believed this is augmented reality. So they have either seen like the Wikitude things floating around, or they have seen like a Black Eyed Peas promotion where like the singer jumps out of a CD cover. So this was fun. People were like excited at once, or even twice or 3 times. But after that, the real value has not been there. It was a nice attention getter. It was something good to kind of draw the hype. But apart from that, the value was not really there. So as things have developed and the technology being used for this little Black Eyed Peas promotion is 2D recognition. So a technology that's already very mature. And over time, this technology has evolved. And I have 2-3 examples here where like 2D recognition is the same technology as 2011. The same thing as when like the Black Eyed Peas jumped out of the cover. But still, what has happened over time is augmented reality has been embedded in a use case that creates value. What you see here is like augmented reality as a kind of augmented e-commerce use case. This one is an example for German MediaMarkt. Same thing, same examples we have like with Victoria's Secret, with Canadian Tire, with Bed Bath & Beyond, and many others, where they use 2D recognition to really recognize catalog pages and embed it in a regular mobile commerce workflow. The conversion numbers are fantastic, but not because the tech is so good. Of course, it's very good, but not only because it's so good, but mostly because it's embedded in a very good use case. It creates value for the customer that they can directly, from the printed catalog, initiate a mobile commerce transaction. And this is, I think, one of the key paradigms for AR. As long as it creates value, then it's here to stay. Another example is Canadian Tire, very large chain in Canada, and they have phenomenal success by augmenting all brochures, augmenting all flyers. And also, what I like about their use case, they don't call their service augmented reality anymore. They call it the Canadian Tire Wow service. And I think that's another kind of secret of success of this hype cycle. when people don't talk about the technology anymore, but they talk about a service, and AR is just like technology to kind of contribute to the overall success, then it's here to stay, and then it really creates value. And this is exactly what's happening now to the second generation of augmented reality, the 2D recognition-driven technology stack around augmented reality. Having said that, now we're entering this third stage of augmented reality. So requiring different hardware, requiring different software. It's the 3D recognition and tracking wave, I would like to call it. So this is a lot more complex on a research level than 2D recognition. And of course, you can imagine 3D isn't 3D. An object is different to like a room. A room is different to like a building. A building even is different to like a machinery. So, and of course, like faces are totally different beast again. So all these are theoretically 3D recognition challenges, but in reality, these all require a special handling on one hand. These require special algorithms on the other hand. These require certain workflows. So meaning whenever you want to kind of apply one of those technologies, it has to fit in your workflow. It has different challenges. And this is the kind of third wave that is just starting now. 3D recognition and how this kind of evolves from a technology to a service that creates value. Just as I mentioned earlier, the path 2D recognition has taken from a little gimmicky black-eyed pea service up to a very well-embedded and very successful commerce application. This was supposed to be phase 4, that's a typo. So actually, augmented reality is now kind of leaving this disillusionment phase and is kind of entering the slope of enlightenment. And when you look a little bit at the market, look at the requirements that come in into our inbox, this is pretty much where we are right now, specifically in this kind of third wave of augmented reality. So one of the buzzwords here is enterprise. So in many cases, enterprise are the ones driving innovations. Enterprises are the ones who have the budget to drive innovations. And here, right now, it became very clear that augmented reality can contribute significantly to the success of like productivity, can contribute significantly to increasing efficiency. And like the buzzword here is again augmented reality as part of like a much bigger IoT picture. I talked about Gartner calls the second and third generation products. I think that's also what I mentioned earlier. It's all about funding pilots. So it's also very typical for a technology in that phase that technology is there, workflows are not clear, limitations are not clear. How can they be applied in real life? And that's why pilots are so important. So this is exactly the kind of phase we're in right now. Enterprises facing funding pilots for applying this third generation technology into their real life use cases. Finally, conservative companies remain cautious. It's clear it's not mass market yet. Therefore, they are kind of holding back. So I showed this slide earlier in the morning. So it's like the IoT stuff. So that's why we focus a lot now on this whole third generation, because we believe that is where value being created in the short run. That's where value being created in the midterm. Yes, I do believe Pokémon has done a good job in kind of educating the masses. Still, until Pokémon will become a kind of mass market, or like AR will become a mass market phenomenon in everybody's life, it's still gonna take a few years, specifically when it has the right hardware everybody can really use on a daily basis. So why IoT? Why does it create value? And where does it create value? And so we do that for quite a while now. And it's really interesting to see that how our technology that's very generic receives interest from so many companies, from so many verticals we have never thought about. I took some examples to give you like a rough impression where IoT and AR play an important role. So this starts with smart cities. So the first time I've heard about that was like 2011 in Qatar, when they kind of came up like with the huge visions. Of course, they had huge budgets. That's why they asked Cisco to drive their IoT and AR strategy. But they are now building a city outside of Doha, which is like the perfect smart city. And of course, all devices, they store data in a central IoT platform. And of course, everything is kind of connected and visualized using augmented reality. That's why a smart city is like one of those fields where IoT and AR will generate a significant value in the next few years. Second, of course, visualizing product design. That's, I think, where HoloLens does a great job in kind of evangelizing collaborative product design using augmented reality and the right soft and hardware combination there. It's all about education, interactive education. So we already see a lot in 2D recognition when it's about like interactive school books, interactive manuals and tutorials. But now when we go into 3D, that's a totally new field. This reaches then areas like medtech, that reaches areas like enterprise, where really education becomes interactive using very advanced 3D technologies. One aspect here, Caterpillar example, I think that's from Vuforia. It's all about like maintaining here the IoT Institute said like a heavy equipment vehicle fleet. Of course, it applies to maintenance in all kind of industries and all kind of verticals. One core use case about IoT and AR, of course, is like making sense of industrial sensor data. Really displaying sensor data where they are originated, displaying the data where they belong to, and really kind of showing errors before they occur. And last but not least, and that's an example where the guys from Bosch and Reflect did a great job in terms of like really making technical documentation actually useful. And that's like another area where augmented reality provides the opportunity not only to show documentation, but also to customize it based on the actual user. And that's a benefit no other technology can do than augmented reality. So let's come back to the Gartner hype cycle again. So it seems we are still at the bottom, and Gartner said we are now on the way to this enlightenment stage. So looking at like our inbox and requests we receive, and looking at how many people are here in the room and at the event, it seems like for an industry that's really at the bottom, I think things go already quite well. But at least they can't get any worse, so which is a very good news. And even though I think they're quite good. And kind of matching the Gartner hype cycle with DG Capital, like Tim Merrill, who has been quoted by Ori in the morning as well. So Tim Merrill says that augmented reality is going to kind of make a $20 billion revenue mark in 2020. But still, so what you see there, 2016 is primarily driven by AR and the small pilots I mentioned. 2017 will already be a very interesting year when the first of those pilots will come into reality and will be deployed live. And then 2018-19, that's exactly when Gartner says AR will be mass market. And that's when, on one hand, enterprises will have deployed those successful POCs into real-life environments. And on the other hand, Pokémon has kind of reached its next generation. And augmented reality, the third generation, will not only be an enterprise service, but really also create significant value for the end customer in a mass market scenario. Thank you very much.